Conrad Murray sentenced to 4 years in prison for his involvement in the death of Michael Jackson. I want to bring Beth Karras back with prosecutors in the case, David Walgren and Deborah Brazil. And, you know, Beth, I think one of the most poignant moments and disturbing moments for people to hear about was that moment during the trial when they talked about how Michael Jackson's children reacted to what was happening the day he died.
You know, absolutely. And I had a question for David regarding that. David, did you ever consider putting Prince or Paris on the stand? After all, they're the only family members who were present and would have something relevant to say about the events that morning.
You know, it was always a consideration. It was never something that I wanted to pursue, though, and primarily for the benefit of the children and the family. If I felt they were absolutely crucial, I would have approached them more directly. I didn't think they were absolutely crucial, and I didn't want to put them through that trauma if it was not necessary. So, as in any case, you know, all the potential witnesses are considered and evaluated. In this particular case, because they were minors, because they had gone through so much, and because it was their father's death that they essentially had to witness, I personally was seeking to avoid putting them on the stand in such a high publicity case where they would just be subject to more scrutiny and more trauma and more pain.
You know, there was another point in the trial, actually it happened a couple of times. It was a high point, just like that surreptitious recording of a drugged Michael Jackson. When that was played, that was really pretty dramatic. And that was when you displayed a photo of Michael Jackson on the gurney at the hospital after he passed away, and then later the autopsy photo. There's a lot of talk about that. I mean, why did you feel that it was necessary to do that?
Well, number one, this is a homicide case, and one of the essential elements of a homicide case is obviously that there is a death. We were also, at the time, anticipating defense arguments or defense tactics that they would take in their case, particular witnesses that they may have called to suggest, you know, Michael Jackson was essentially on his deathbed already. There had been some indication in the pretrial litigation that the defense was going to pursue a theory that Michael was in such poor shape that, you know, it wasn't really the actions of Conrad Murray, but it's essentially Michael Jackson himself that caused his death. And there were comments about how thin and frail and sickly he was. And also then for the coroner's testimony, there was testimony regarding the condition of Michael Jackson and his general health, and the coroner actually testified that he was actually in very good health for a 50-year-old male. He had a very strong heart and was actually you know, quite healthy. But these particular pictures were put into evidence for purposes of the coroner's testimony and also for purposes of anticipating any potential defenses that we thought may arise.
Well, let me ask you a couple of questions about another area, one of which is actually related to what you just said, and that's Conrad Murray's statement to the police 2 days after Michael Jackson died. That statement, audio taped for 2 hours and 35 minutes, I think it was really critical to your proof. First, do you think you could have proven the case without the statement? That's my first question. The second one is, do you think he was truthful at all in the statement?
You know, I would just say on the issue of the statement was crucial to us in the sense that once Conrad Murray and Michael Jackson went behind closed doors in that bedroom, and once Michael Jackson was obviously deceased, we had no real source of information as to what transpired behind those doors. We had Conrad Murray's statement, and then from there, through, you know, various forensics, we were able to get the telephone records and piece together kind of a timeline as best we could through witnesses that were on the telephone with Dr. Murray and witnesses who had received text messages or text messaged him. But as far as any kind of timeline that took place behind those doors, the statement was very important to us because the bottom line is there were no other witnesses to what happened in that room, with only 2 people in that room and only one being alive. That was the only source of what happened behind those doors.
Well, you clearly pointed out a number of inconsistencies or lies in that statement, but do you think he was truthful at all about anything?
Well, certainly, you know, he acknowledged giving the propofol for over 2 months. He indicated it was to assist Michael Jackson in sleeping. I think that was probably that was the case. As far as the particular events of June 25th, 2009, it's very hard to say what he said was truthful and what he said was not. I think most of it was not truthful. I think very likely he was out of the room for a great period of time, that he had completely abandoned Michael Jackson. When in the interview to the police he says he went just to the restroom and was gone for only 2 minutes, I think that's absolutely not truthful. I think his attention or his physical presence had been gone for a very lengthy period of time. And quite frankly, we don't know how long Michael was in the bed, not breathing, before Conrad Murray even noticed him.
You know, there was something that he said, though, that I always wondered if he really did try to wean them off propofol for 2 days at least. I know he was stockpiling propofol. I know he was buying a lot of it, so there doesn't seem to be any evidence of weaning except those words. But Michael Jackson had 2 really good rehearsals the last 2 days of his life, on the 23rd and 24th. And those happened to correspond to the 2 days that Murray says he took him off propofol. And I was wondering if you think that that might be true.
You know, Beth, I honestly don't know. I mean, we also have a situation where the defendant's giving a statement after the fact. He's giving a statement to the police after he knows what has transpired in the preceding days. So, you know, in that situation, it's easier to frame a story to match up with the facts that you know as they exist. But again, the whole notion that he was weaning him off, there were only 2 people in that room. And the propofol shipments, the benzodiazepine shipments do not support any theory of weaning him off. Dr. Murray would have you believe that he began substituting the benzodiazepines as part of this weaning off process, but yet we know from the shipments of narcotics that the benzodiazepines had been ordered consistently and had not just been recently ordered as part of a weaning off process. So there are a lot of holes in that story, and you know, other than coming from the mouth of Conrad Murray, no one will know with absolute certainty what happened behind those doors.
You know, I have another question about, as you were preparing for the trial and getting your experts lined up, especially an expert in propofol, an anesthesiologist. I mean, did you talk to a lot of experts? And based on what they were telling you, did you think the defense was going to find an expert to say that what Conrad Murray did was okay? I mean, what were you getting from the experts you were talking to?
The experts that I spoke with across the board, from a wide array of medical expertise, you know, multiple different fields of medicine, there was an absolute, I would say 100% consensus that what Conrad Murray was absolutely wrong and was absolutely an extreme violation of any standard of care. So I was not in this, you know, during the stages of the investigation, I was not hearing from doctors saying that what Conrad Murray did was proper. I never heard that, and I think even the defense experts at trial, or defense doctors they called, and the defense expert had to acknowledge some of the serious errors made by Conrad Murray.
You know, we heard from Conrad Murray in his police statement and in an interview that aired after the verdict. But if he had testified, what would you have wanted to ask him?
You know, it would have been there were so many contradictions in his statement to the police, and so many contradictions as it related to the facts that we now knew them to be. Any questioning of Conrad Murray would have been extremely lengthy, and there would have been a lot of areas I would have gotten into. But I think, you know, one question would be whether there had been an accident or a near miss. I would characterize it as a near miss with Michael Jackson previously. In other words, had there been a moment when Michael Jackson had almost died prior to this evening? But the overarching question would probably just be, how could you as a doctor be so completely reckless when you have someone else's life in your hands?
You have to wonder whether or not he would have answered you the way he answered in the interview he gave to NBC when he said that he didn't feel he did anything wrong and didn't feel remorse. I mean, what was your reaction when you heard that interview?
Well, my reaction was that statement was going to go into our sentencing memorandum, because I could not believe that at this stage of the proceedings, after all the evidence that had been heard from all of the witnesses and all of the experts, that Dr. Murray, apparently it was reported this interview was done just 9 days before the verdict, chose to say on videotape that he does not feel any guilt because he did not do anything wrong. And I was a bit shocked by the statement, and I included the statement in our sentencing memorandum for the judge to consider when evaluating whether Conrad Murray had indeed expressed any sense of remorse or any sense of personal responsibility.
I only have time for one more question for you. And so on a lighter note, so you and Deborah had elevator issues, were late to court a couple of times, and apparently Judge Pastor had enough at one point in the middle of the trial and fined you $10 for every minute you were late, 6 minutes late one day. Each of you assessed $60. Did you ever have to pay that fine?
That fine is still pending.
Will you have to pay it?
I assume so.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you for your time and your overnight trip to New York, and look forward to covering future cases of yours. Back to
Thank you.
Nancy.
Thank you.